today I want to talk about dance and rhythms of rest. This is the topic, and you will understand why it's going to be called the rhythms of rest, actually. And so busyness, I think next slide, is something that we are all familiar with. And honestly, me standing here doing this topic, I would say it's half a miracle, and also I really feel that God is on this for today, that if you're weary, if you're troubled, I just want to make this as an invitation to just come and just soak and just be. That I don't want you to feel like you have to take a bunch of notes or you have to learn something, but I honestly just want you to rest in His presence and understand His heart. And so busyness is something each and all parts of our lives, right, that we can't get away from. I think in the older generation mindset, kind of like my dad's, it's always about you work hard first and then you rest later. It's all about that I got to chiong all the way to the end and then I just slack. And that's kind of how their generation was like. And it doesn't work for us. I mean, most of you that are around my age, it doesn't work for us because it's just not sustainable in this current economy. It doesn't even feel like, even if we work hard enough, that we will get the enjoyment that we think we might have at the end, right? And so I did some research, and it's saying that, compared to 20 or 30 years ago, 70% are saying that the average worker now has a greater need to improve work skills. And 70% is also saying that the average worker now has more on-the-job stress. 62% saying less job security, and 60% saying that the average worker must work harder to earn a decent living. And the list just goes on. And every time you ask someone, like, why are you so busy, or how are you? You can just see in their face or in their tone that it's just life, right? They just give you this look that life equals busyness. There's no running away from it. And in a recent article, just like 1st Feb, on the Straits Times, it was talking about Gen Z splurging on luxury goods to soothe their economic despair. And they call this as doom spending because they feel that they can't even afford the luxuries that maybe their parents could. And so what they could do was just spend $2,000 on a Prada bag. And so that's the term coined, doom spending. And this is what has been flooding our generation, the generations below us, and maybe even Alpha, right, Gen A. And so why is this even happening? And so looking back just a century ago, in a short essay published in 1930 by the world's most important economist, John Maynard Keynes, he said that he predicted that within 100 years, just because of the way the Industrial Revolution was supposed to be with technology, that most people would be working no more than 15 hours a week, which is essentially Monday, Tuesday, 5 days weekend. And everyone's like, yeah, but obviously this is not happening. And he actually believed that the standard of life for people would be 4 to 8 times better for all of us by 2030. And it's already 2024, right? And for the majority, working would actually be optional. I can see the look in all of your faces. You're like, how wrong was he? Yes, very wrong he was. So advances in technology that we thought would free up time, in reality, leisure time has decreased by 37%. And so it also shows that, technology has also enabled us to carry work everywhere and anywhere. And we know during COVID, the lines between work and rest has been significantly blurred. And me as a freelancer with international clients, there is no line. There are some times where I have 9 p.m. calls or 10 p.m. invoices to make just because of the time difference. So what happens? Our minds get so overly stimulated that we can't even rest, even when we want to sleep. And this is the fatigue that we're facing right now. And so going further about what sleep deprivation actually does for us is that I did more research, and actually Singapore is one of the top 3 countries in the world that has the highest number of sleep deprivation. And it shows that it's actually a crisis, a public health crisis here, and only 17% sleep throughout the night, which is a little bit insane. And so a lack of sleep can cause physical and mental issues. I'm sure all of us know this, but it really affects the way we function, the way we relate, the way we work and play. And so sleep is essential to our lives. And I don't know for you, but I'm also a dreamer. And this topic has actually a lot of linkages within dreams and dream interpretations, which is linked to how our sleep cycles can actually help us in this, right? So sleep is an essential part of our lives, but at its core, it's actually a spiritual problem. Why? Because the first two commandments, right? Love God first, and then love people as yourself. And so how we grow is how we measure our love towards God and other people and ourselves. But we know when we're tired, we become the angriest person, the most mangtang people, like the most irritable. And I am like an obvious specimen of this. I literally live that from time to time, that I am that, especially to my family. So when we're tired, it's definitely more difficult to love God. And the more tired we are, the more prone we are to sin. So actually, there's so many studies done that sleep actually has a link to anger and impulsivity. And so a study was done with Japanese high schoolers, juniors and seniors, about 94,777 of them, and to study the linkages between anger and impulsive. And they realized that the less sleep that they got, the more they were prone to anger and impulsive behaviors, such as consuming alcohol, smoking, skipping breakfast, skipping school, like truancy, decrease in positive feelings, depressive, using mobile phone for longer hours. And it's very interesting because it only starts from junior year up. They found that it doesn't actually affect like infants, which is pretty interesting. So this all suggests a correlation between sleep and anger. And now the average person sleeps 20% less than 100 years ago. So we are basically overworked and underrested and discontent. We are busy, bored, and afraid of missing out all at the same time. Yes, that is the cycle. Our lives are full of activity, and we live at best half distracted throughout them. We are always planning, and it's so hard to be present. And so, as we live in this cycle, not just loving God is hard, loving people around us is so hard. If we're in this realm, we're almost blinded by a single target, which is the task that we have to finish, yes? That we don't even consider anything else around us. So this is a really good example. So it's a true story. A man was playing a violin in a subway, and a handful of people stopped to listen, with only a few offering up a clap. And the violin managed to raise about $30 in tips that day. And no one seemed to realize that this violinist was actually Joshua Bell, one of the most renowned violinists of our days. And he actually had a concert 2 days before that raised over $3.5 million. Sorry, he actually had a sold-out theater that averaged $100, and he was playing on a $3.5 million violin, and nobody knew it was him. So the lesson is clear that it's hard to miss. It's easy to miss an extraordinary moment when we're busy in an everyday life. And I know with you that it's so easy to walk through life just with a target, right? That I have this things to do. I got to get it clear throughout the day. This is my to-do list, and that's how we schedule our lives. But maybe we're just not being aware. I mean, this year, this whole theme is about eyes to hear, eyes to see, ears to hear, right? And it's all about being aware about what God has in store for us. And actually, 2 weeks ago, God was training me about how to be present. And so I remember there was, for 1 week, every day I was just waking up being, God, I just offer myself to be an encounter to anyone that comes my way. And I tell you, at that moment in that week, I mean, I'm rarely out, right? I'm just working 24/7, but I was going for spin class. That's just a 5-minute cycle from my house. And I was going to the mall just to get food and home. This was literally how I'm like out 10 minutes a day in a way. And so as I was leaving spin class, I was just like thinking, God, whoever I pass, if you highlight that person to me, I would just be here for you. And I just remember cycling to the shopping center, parking my bike, thinking I just got to go in, pick up my food, and I'm out, right? And as I'm walking, I see this girl like standing in Great Wall City, and she's one of those people trying to sell you something, right? And I'm trying to avoid eye contact as much as possible, but I see her really far away. And as I'm walking, she sees me, and you can tell she's just staring at me coming in, and I'm like, no. And I'm just like, in my head, I just want to go. But I remember Holy Spirit saying, hey, you said you're going to show up if I gave you the chance, right? So anyways, I just, okay, whatever, right? So I'm walking, and she comes up to me trying to sell me something. And so she works for WWF. She's trying to tell me about the pangolins and all. And I go, okay, if this is what you want me to do, God, I shall just listen to her. And I'm like panting from spin class, like all sweaty and red, right? And she comes and talks to me, and I'm taking my time and to type in everything. And then she goes and she says something like, she's like, yo, I'm so sorry, like I'm not feeling well, like I just need to go and sit down. And I'm like, yeah, sure, go, because I'm really taking my time to do this, because my mind wasn't like focused at all. And so she goes to sit down, her colleague comes, and he's like trying to help me, and he goes, did she tell you what happened? And I'm like, no, she just told me she was tired. So I just thought maybe she just needed a break, because it was so hot out, and they were just standing outside the MRT station, right? And he goes, yeah, she actually had a stroke, and she just recovered, and it's just been 2 months since then. So she sometimes like blacks out, and she hasn't fully recovered. And I go, what? She had like a stroke? And she said, yeah, she actually had a brain injury caused by an aneurysm. And I go, I mean, the coincidence is crazy, because just a year ago, my sister had an aneurysm. And so after filling out the whole form, I went to get my food, and I came back with like some juice for them. And I went to her, and she was sitting down at this moment, and I just walked over to her. I just said, can I pray for you? Because my sister actually went through the same thing that you did. And we referenced back that it also happened the same time frame. I think for hers was September last year. For my sister was September the year before that. And so I just told her what happened to my sister and a testimony of what God did. And I asked if I could pray for her. And her colleague was sitting next to her. And he just went, oh my gosh, this was exactly what you needed to hear. And so I prayed for her. She starts crying. And then I just leave her. And I went home. And that was just my 10 minutes that I took out of my day, right? But this girl had an encounter with God. And so it's about also being intentional to create a space that it's just being clear that, hey, even if I'm busy, I can, like, God is not out of my busyness. He knows how busy you are, but he also wants to love people aside from you, right? That you can also, like, hear his heartbeat for others. So this was just what happened, I think 2-3 weeks ago. So next slide. So if I want to, this is so bad, I'm so sorry. Okay, this might be better. I should bold my text next time. Try to make it sleek, Okay, so this is kind of the schedule of our normal day and night rhythms, right, of life that we are so used to, that we wake up in the day, we have all these things scheduled, and then we go, okay, now night comes and I can finally rest. This is the rhythms of life. But I want to take you back to the original, the Hebrew culture, how they actually lived from rest, how God's version of the rhythm of life was. So next slide. If we go to Genesis, can you guys actually see this? Okay, great, because there is just blank. In Genesis 1:3, it says that, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God said that the light was good, and he separated the light from darkness, and he called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. And actually, if you carry on reading throughout Genesis, it keeps repeating. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. And then you go the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day. So actually, how the Hebrew lived, it was actually from evening till day. That was how they structured their day. That evening and there was morning was the first day, and a day actually ends at sundown. And that was how they did their fast too, that their fast ended at sundown. So my question for you is, how would it look like if your day started in the evening and ended at sundown? This took me a while to recalibrate the way I did my day and the way I thought of a day, because it started then. You start to prioritize the night, right? Because if you know your night's going to link up to the day, you start understanding and being like, God, what do you want in my night season that will actually be an overflow to the day? And so it's all about living from an overflow from the night season towards the day, that it's when so the nighttime is not just for rest, right? It's for intimacy with God. When he gives you downloads about wisdom, about revelation, about what he wants you to do the next day. And all these things as you're in rest and meditating on his words. When you wake up the next day. I think you can just go to the slide before. Yeah, when you're living in this throughout the next day, it's sometimes do you guys wake up like humming or singing a song? Or the dreams that you had are from the night before. It's actually everything that you do the night before your brain retains, and that it becomes like a gateway to flow into the morning. And so this verse, I also feel that I'm preaching this now is because a few days ago on Wednesday, I led like a BSSM online mission group to minister to a church in Okinawa, and they're actually called Sunset Group. And as I was Sunset Church, and I was praying for them, I heard the Lord say that he's taking back the nights. And I felt like that was pretty profound, because I felt that he's taking back the nights in a way that he's training up the church so that we may be vessels of rest. And that it might feel stretching right now, but it's because he wants you to behold what rest and what peace is. That when we go into the night, or when people come to rest, they will just feel the peace of God without even us doing anything. That it will just be an overflow of who we are. And that we now know, like especially in Asia, people, it's like we're a 24/7 kind of cities going on, right? And he wants us to be these like walking light beams, that we're bringing light into darkness, that from their evenings we're the dawn. And even Chris Valentin prophesied about this is the womb of the dawn that's coming. That I do feel like there's a stirring in this and a tidal wave that's happening, that he's flipping what we now know as work and rest, and he's flipping that to be rest and work. That he's going, I no longer want my people to be in this toxic cycle where they just work and work and work and feel like rest is the gift, but essentially that you are being so rested that you can work in what I give you to. So this is a word I'm also releasing over Embrace Church, that we are taking back the nights for our people, and that starts with us. Right? And so, and I know some of us, there's a fear of rest. If I'm going to be honest, there's maybe trauma or open doors that has brought in chaos, fear, and confusion. For me, my fear of rest was I was afraid of dreams, because I always get attacked in my dreams. I was afraid of the supernatural. And it's funny because now I'm in a supernatural school, and God just turned it around. But God promised us, I didn't put this verse up there, but he says that do not fear when you go to rest, that there is no fear in that. So it's his promise for us. And that so the more exhausted we are, obviously the harder it is for us to love or to bear fruit. And so I just want to, the next few minutes, I'm going to bring us through what actually rest is biblically in the Bible. And this is just an overview. If you find anything that really speaks out to you, I would really encourage you to take a photo and start researching on your own. So this is just 4 words that I found. So half of it's Greek. So the top to the right is Greek, the bottom is Hebrew. And these are just 4 words that are about rest. So, okay, going very quickly, going to the first one, rest, anapao, anapausis. So this talks about rest inwards. Next slide. Yes, there we go. So I'll be covering that one first. Anapao and nuach. I think, okay, wait, we can just pause on that. Just something funny. And in the Hebrew, it's pronounced, you say as nuach, but it's actually noah. So I always think that is that how a Hawking gets it, as like, I just want the noah, you know? Because I just want to. Anyway, so moving on. Okay, so we're going to go into anapausis. So anapausis actually means, it's more like an inner word of rest, right? Restorative in character. So a good verse for this, next slide, is Matthew 11:28, which is, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, right? And actually, come to is a movement, all, non-discriminatory, all of you are welcome. This is the interesting part. the word give and the word rest is the same. It's both anapao. So essentially, he's saying, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will anapao you, anapao, which means that I will give you the rest so that you can rest. And that word anapao actually not just means rest, but it means to cause or to permit one to cease from any movement or labor in order that they may recover and recollect his strength, that he may rest, refresh, to give one's self calm and patient expectation. And I love this version. I think the next one, yes, the Message version. Are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. This is such an invitation from the Father. He's essentially saying, whatever I give you, you will have. I anapao, you anapao. So next one. Oh, is it a slide? Okay, we go to Noah, which is so... Nuak. Okay, so this is pronounced Nuak. It means to cause to rest, to make quiet, to a light set down. Similar to anapao. And with Nuak, in Exodus 17, it says, when it came to pass, when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. I thought this was so interesting that the word rest also meant let down. So sometimes battles looks like resting on God, that it doesn't make sense to you, but it makes sense to him. That how could Moses ever win, right? Win a battle just by lifting up the staff that was given. He got so tired that they had to put some rocks under his hand to lift it up. But that's actually how I love this, because this rest talks about inner rest, right? Sometimes our insides need something to rest and hook onto and to cling onto. You know, even the word wait, I didn't bring my props, but the word wait actually means not just strength, but to hold. And if you imagine, let's say this is God's stuff, right? If weight means rope, what are you actually being bound to? And it says that those that wait on the Lord will renew their strength. So if this is God, and if I'm a rope, okay, this tiny rope that is like, there's no weight, but if I bind it over this, whose strength am I getting on now? How much stronger am I? Who's the one actually doing the lifting and the strength? And I love like how you talked about, you know, the oxen. Oh no. Okay. Yeah, how the oxen, you know, take my yoke for it's easy. Whose yoke are we taking on, right? Whose strength are we using that? So when we look at this, that sometimes rest means just letting down also our preconceptions of what it looks like to win a battle, our ideas of what rest looks like, our ideas of how we think we can do this. Because I can tell you something, God only leads us into a conflict He's equipped us to win. So if we go to the next slide, is it in Exodus? So when Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near, for God said, the people might change their minds. And when they see war, they will return to Egypt, you know? And so God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea. And the sons of Israel went up to the martial array from the land of Egypt. So maybe you might find yourself in the wilderness because God knows that that's not a battle you can win. Just want to say that. Mic drop. But because God knows that He will only lead you into battles that you know you can win. So if you're actually there and you're figuring out, okay, if I'm here and I have peace in my heart, but I don't see a way that I can win this, He's saying, hey, I want you to rep. I want you to wait for me to win this battle. I want you to take my yoke, which is I want you to fasten yourself to my strength so that we can move together, that it's not you moving, but it's me moving with you, because I've already equipped you to win this battle that you didn't even know you could win. But just trust me, and that's what it means to trust, right? And wait, it's not about you, it's about, hey, who am I with? And that is the Lord. And so it's not cruelty or punishment that God leads us sometimes through the battles. It's actually part of our training for eternity, right? To rule and reign with Christ. So actually, this is a beautiful story of God leading Israel away from battle. It just shows his wisdom to guide us only into conflicts for which we are ready. And so to a normal person, again, this wouldn't make sense. And so in Proverbs 21, it's not there, but it says, the horse is made ready for battle, but victory rests with the Lord. And so with Moses, right, actually, I'm just going to divert a bit. What was the difference between the Israelites and people like Moses? Or the Israelites with people like David, Saul, Solomon? The Israelites all knew God. They were all like, this is what God did, right? God was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But then they were like, this is what God did. And they kind of put God in a box. But Moses knew God's ways. Like David knew God's heart. And so when they saw the deeds of God, they went, oh, this is what God did. But actually, this speaks of God's character, of his nature, how he functions, and how, oh, you're actually so much bigger than this, that this is not just a one-time thing that you're going to do and replicate. That actually this shows more about your heart. So for example, if God heals a blind person, right, and like in the Bible, Jesus took some mud and he smeared it over his eyes. It's not like a one-time that every time God heals blind eyes, I got to smear mud on someone's eyes. No, it was the heart that God heals. That was the heart of God. And so it's not a definer that this is the only thing that you do. It was actually showing the nature of how he worked. And so every time, Moses walked with God, right? He witnessed, he experienced God since the burning flames, and he was with God face to face. And when you're at that level of intimacy, you're actually exposed to a wisdom that this world desperately needs. As a lecturer in LaSalle, I need wisdom every day to deal with situations and solutions that I have no answer for, or questions that my students ask me and I don't even know how they think of them, right? But when I'm with the one that created the earth, that has solutions for everything, I can go, there is a solution for this because I know who my God is. And so when we are having intimacy with God, it creates trust. It's like binding that, hey, I don't know this, but I'm going to ask this because he knows everything, right? That is how even with Joseph, who was the prime minister then, he always knew that when he first did his dream interpretation, the first thing he said was yes, do not all dreams belong to God. It always reflects back to who's the one, who is the solution bearer, who's the one that has the answers. So when I'm face to face with him, it actually transformed my mind and my brain the way I think, that it doesn't even make sense to anyone at all. But if it makes sense to God, I'm going to do it because he's the one that's going to win this victory for me. I just have to prepare my horse. Yes? So, next slide. So now I'm going to go into the outer sanctum, which we have Shabbat, which is Sabbath today. And also, I can't read that, it's too small. Sorry. And katapausis. Yep. So, okay, short. Yeah. So about resting outward, right? It's all about, in John 5:17, I think next slide, he says, in his defense, Jesus said to him, my Father is always at work to this very day, and I too am working. So now your question is, okay, if I can do inner rest, how does it look like physically, right? So I want to talk Monday to Saturday, when we're all at our jobs, then we have to work. And I want to let you know that God never entered a state of idleness, and actually rest is quite, it's not static, but it's active, right? And there is a sense that, and God is always at work, but it's how do we rest while we work? And so the question is not about how many hours of work I do, it's about how do I rest as I do it. And so can we all agree that Jesus was a super busy man in his 3 years of ministry? I mean, this man was a role model. So if we go into Matthew, I just want to share the story. It says that this was the part where John the Baptist actually died, was beheaded, and I just want to create a background story. So John the Baptist, when he was born, was around the same time as Jesus. He was born earlier, and they kind of grew up together, right? And he was born for one purpose, which was to prepare the way for Jesus to come. And I just want to show you a story. Can you imagine Jesus growing up as a carpenter's son? He had other friends, of course, but only John that really knew his true calling and who he was. So this was like your BFF, right? Your childhood friend, your brother that you thought you never had. And so it goes into this story where, and the king was sorry, but because of his oaths and his guests, he commanded it to be given, and he sent and had John beheaded in the prison. And his head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother. And his disciples came and took the body and buried it, and they went and told Jesus. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. So imagine if you're hearing the news that your childhood friend just got brutally murdered, and you are the God of the universe, and you knew it wasn't your time to save him. So he heard it, and the first thing Jesus did was he withdrew. He didn't even go, oh my gosh, how could they do this? I'm so upset right now. Someone give me a tissue, or I need to talk about this. I need to process my emotions. I'm not in a good place right now. He didn't do any of that. He didn't even talk or say a word. All he did was he withdrew. And I think when I read it again this time, it really hit me, because right after this, when the crowds heard it, they followed him. Can you imagine? All you wanted to do was just be with God. And his first instinct in pain was to go and be with the Father. But for many of us, our first instinct is to maybe find comfort in somebody else. And so when he was going to be with the Father, the crowds heard and they followed him. And when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion, and he healed them. And so Jesus never let his pain prevent him from showing compassion. Instead, I believe that, pain actually is in your prefrontal cortex, and actually if you're tired, it's very hard to control your emotions here, and that's what causes the impulse behavior, the anger, the depression and all. But I believe that Jesus was in such a place still of rest that he could not let his compassion hurt he could not let his pain hurt his compassion. And when he went there, he still healed their sick. Even though, I don't know, just imagine a person being like, I came here to be the savior of you, and you killed my best friend. But instead, I'm not going to let any of that pain hurt me. I'm still going to heal you. And before he even healed them, right? This was even before resurrection. I just imagine him going that every time he healed someone, he knew why he was going to the cross for. And that's what they sang, right? What Beth sang, that he died for the joy set before him. That every time he looked at a person being healed, that was the joy that he died set before him. And so this was the heart of God. And so we go to the next verse, and I love this part. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place, and the day is now over. This was the Hebrew culture, right? When it's evening, that was the end of the day. But God didn't want to send them away because he knew that they couldn't get food, right? For them, if that was the day it ended, he knew that this is now where rest started. And so this was when he did that miraculous miracle where he multiplied the fish and loaves that we all knew. But the fact that Jesus started this miracle also in rest. And if you continue reading this, finally after this miracle, he sends them away. And he finally goes and hangs out by himself. And then the next thing you know, his disciples are on, he sends them into a boat, and they're screaming like Jesus, and they see Jesus coming in the storm, and he walks on water, right? If you just think about that, every time Jesus withdraws and spends time with the Father, he does something even crazier. Another miracle just breaks out just because of the intimacy he spends with the Father. And so this is why it's also called the rhythms of rest, because rest doesn't mean, I'm just looking to the evening now that I can rest, or I'm also super guilty of this. It's always, I'm just going to work. I have the weekend. I will rest then, right? But actually, it looks like, hey, rest is already available for me now. I'm just going to take it. I didn't get this till last Friday. I was so overworked. What the feeling where you wake up, you still feel like a zombie, that you can't sleep. That was me. And I just felt so out of it. I couldn't even work. So I just went to my bed and opened the Bible. And next thing I knew, it was a 2-hour nap. And I woke up feeling so refreshed and amazing. And I realized that, hey, like I'm a human, I'm not a robot. It doesn't need to look like I'm always like tanking through like 9 to 5 or 9 to 9. Like that's not how a bullet train works, right? Even though I used to be, oh my gosh. So in our old agency, I used to kind of pride myself on that Xiu Hui will always say like, oh, the bullet train has left, now the normal trains are at work. Because I was always the only one leaving on time. And I used to be feeling so happy and so smug about that actually. But that was so wrong because I thought that I was prioritizing like work-life balance. But actually, I just completely blocked people from 9 to 6. And God made us to be a light on a hill within our workplace. And if I'm doing that just because I can rest after, I'm not living out the life that God has installed for me, right? So then it's called a dance because it's not a one-way thing. It's not a one-way solution. Everyone here has their different way of dancing. You know, mine might look like the cha-cha or like some house music sometimes, but it's really all about the day-to-day, right? Because for my day, it does go up and down. And sometimes I might take a nap in the afternoon and I work till 9, but that's fine because I already rested in the day. So it's also asking yourself, what kind of rhythms work best for you, that you can just create space for him to breathe. And that honestly might just look like 5 minutes throughout your day. So going on to rest, next slide. So both of them have similar words, which means to stop, to cease. And it's interesting that for kata pauses, it means to restrain, and for Sabbath, it means to be done. But I'm going to go into kata pau first. So kata actually means down, and pau means to make cease of some activity. So, it's here. Okay. So actually it means to cause to be at rest, to grant rest. And that's what it means. It means to lay down all activity. And so we go to the next slide. An example of this word use is, let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest so that no one may perish or will perish by following the example of disobedience. I just want to point out that disobedience doesn't talk about you not entering into rest. If you read the whole of Hebrews, it actually talks about evil and unbelieving heart and a lack of faith that prevents you from entering into rest. So actually the unbelief or lack of faith is manifested by that disobedience. So this does not talk about that rest. So this is an example of kata pau, and that rest is work and it's actually intentional. That all work is actually worship unto the Lord, right? But I know there's a lie that always tells you that if I'm resting, I'm wasting time. I don't know if any of you is like me, but that is exactly like me. Even when I take naps, I feel like I'm wasting my life away. And that actually that rest is so needed for progress. That rest is so needed in the kingdom. That it is something that God has ordained. And that God, it's almost like rest is in the way we're built. And I will talk more about that in Sabbath. But rest also requires restraint. So I think we go into Acts. It says, but even with these words, Paul and Barnabas could scarcely restrain the people from sacrificing to them. And this talks about the same of the prefrontal cortex, right? That if you truly do not have rest, you will act out in ways that you didn't even know you could. And do crazy things you didn't even know you could, like sacrificing to Paul. So this talks about how rest is also, how restraint is crucial in rest. That you need to know when to rest, how to rest, and why you should do it. And so I just want to go into Shabbat right now. So it's really nice that we're talking about this on a Sunday. So I just want to go back to what like Sabbath is. So in Genesis 2, 1-3, thus the heavens and earth were finished, and all of the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work that he had made, and he rested on the seventh day. The word he rested means God Sabbath on the seventh day from all his work which he had made, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in he had rested from all of his work. So again, God's Sabbath that he had made. And we go to the next slide. This verse in Exodus actually used the word rested as Nuach. So for in the 6 days, God made the heaven and the earth and all of that in them, and he rested the seventh day. So it's interesting to make these 2 points, that not only did God Sabbath, but God Nuached, which means that he had both an internal and external rest the day he did on Sunday. And he hallowed it. So for 6 days, God worked, and for the last day, there was physical and inner rest, right? So what a Sabbath actually means, it's a weekly day to stop, to cease, to stop from working, wanting, worrying, planning, just stop, stop doing, just stop thinking. But Sabbath is not just a lazy day, a day off, or a play day. I love how Tyler Staton says it. He says it's a sacred time for intentionally attuning our whole selves to that which is most eternal and true, a spiritual practice that ultimately reforms our relationship with both work and rest. So as we're learning the Monday to Saturday, right, to work from rest, the Sunday is actually where we can attune ourselves to what God has for us, and so that we're preparing for the week coming ahead, that we're actually redoing that rhythms of work and rest. That, in Mark it says that the Sabbath was made for men, not man for the Sabbath. When Jesus came, there were so many times he actually rebuked the Pharisees about what Sabbath was because they were creating all these rules and all these laws, but actually that was not intended by him at all. And that's the last thing I want to do for any of you, right? To feel that I have to stop working today. It's nothing pressure. I just want you to understand the heart of God behind Sabbath. And I am too guilty of this. 2 Sundays ago, I was working because I had a deadline on Monday. And it was when God hit me about Sabbath. And actually, Sabbath is also in the 4th commandment. How many of us know, like, in so many of the commandments, Sabbath is the last one that we all don't see much of, right? It's more about do not lie, do not kill, do not murder, or honor your father and mother, right? But then Sabbath, we kind of just overlook it. And so, next slide. Actually, in my Bible study group, we're going through this weekly thing of Sabbath. So if anyone's interested, you may join us, but we're doing essentially what Sabbath is to stop, to rest, and then to delight and worship. So this week was all about just stopping. What does it look like to just stop? And I want to tell you something, like, stopping is not easy. It actually takes a lot of restraint, because when you stop and know there's a deadline, but you stop anyways, you actually have to put your trust somewhere, which is not on yourself. Because so far, it's always been on you, right? That you're carrying this load. You're carrying the burdens. You are the one that has to perform. If anything's going to happen, you are the one that has to deal with the consequence. And so stopping from even worrying is actually a restraint. It's actually self-control, which is part of your prefrontal cortex, right? And so resting, what does rest actually look like? Delighting. Even taking a glass of wine and enjoying dinner with friends, God sees that as worship unto him, because you are actually taking what rest is for him, right? Rest is not just spiritual. It's body, soul, and spirit. It's not just about being like, oh, I'm coming on Sunday, that's why I'm resting. It's, no, like, what are the things that your body needs, right? For me, it's like going out in the sun. So that's me going on a jog, on a hike, or hanging out with friends. All these things are crucial for every part of you to work, to rest, that God wants you to delight in the body he has created you to be, and the things that you actually like to live out, that you're not just a robot, you're a full image of him, like you're a being, you're a man, right, created in his image. Yeah, so I was going to end with that, but I already did that. Okay. So the dance and rhythms of rest, the next slide. So even though I had this image, this is actually how our day might look like, which is a little bit chaotic. I see myself as kind of like an atom ball. I do still have like 1,000 things to do, but it's all about when can I take that time off, and when am I intentionally positioning myself for rest. So now I know for me, Sabbath is Saturday evenings till Sunday, and that's where I cease from everything. But also in my day-to-day life, it's about, hey, like, God, what do you have for me today? Hey, I know that you are in charge of my schedule. Hey, I know that you see how busy I am. Even though it may not look like I'm in rest, but I could tell you that I am not leading my life with any more anxiety. Like Bill Johnson says, busyness is artificial significance. And actually, this is not for people who are just busy for the sake of being busy, right? This is for people that build their identity out of their busy schedule. And it's not healthy, but they feel like they're better about their life just because I'm busy. It feels like I'm significant because of that. They have so many things to do, so many people to me, that I'm an important person. And God doesn't want you to build your identity out of your busy schedule. And so busyness can also silence out things that we need to face and process. So what are the things you feel like you're in a way drowning out these things that God is trying to bring attention to you? And you know, scripture says that we would be led forth in peace. In Isaiah 55, it says, you will go out and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. So Bill always says that he's busy too, but he tries to maintain rest in everything that he does. If not, it starts to draw on him in ways that are unhealthy. So he goes where he doesn't go where peace doesn't take him. We don't go where rest doesn't take us. And he tries to maintain his peace in his life, regardless of how crazy or simple his schedule is. That juggling work and family is definitely really challenging, but we don't want to be anxious about that. Because anxiety, what does it do? It robs from the strength that you have to offer. So if my strength to offer, to help each of the realms of responsibility I have, if my strength can help someone around me, my strength can help someone gain the wisdom that they need or advice that they need or just provide compassion or be a listening ear, anxiety takes away all that. So then what do I have to do now? Maintain peace no matter what, right? So that I'm a strength to wherever I go. And so I'm going to end with this. If you don't recognize the privilege that you have, that is peace, that is given to us freely, we won't grow by experience. Yeah, you can go to that slide, Sarah. So in Exodus 20:11, it says, have you not known? I'm just going to invite Beth to come up and play some. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow faint or weary. His understanding His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youth shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. This is his promise to you. Looking back, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. What does wait look like? Being bound to something. Being like the rope that you're attaching yourself to his strength. So that he will what? He will be mounted up like wings like eagles. For today, I just really felt like an invitation from the Lord for you all to just rest and be in his presence. And the questions that I had, right? What does it look like to start your days in the evenings? What does it look like for me to stop? What does it look like for Sabbath to actually be enjoyable? What does it look like that today, or today that's Sabbath and Palm Sunday? Even today, right? Like what Palm Sunday means, Jesus coming on a donkey. And I actually felt that before we reach next week, which is Easter, that he's actually ushering this week in as a week of peace. That we'll just go in with no strife, and just with his calmness and with his peace. That he's saying that, hey, celebrate, for I already won the Sabbath for you. That rest is for you. That you don't have to strive into it. You just have to take it. You just have to lean into it, and it's an invitation for you to come in. So I'm just going to create this space while Beth leads on to worship. But if anyone just wants to come to the front to just lay down or to get prayed for, I'll be here. But guys, let's just pray. That Lord, I just thank you for today. I just thank you for your rest. I thank you for your peace. I thank you for what Jesus did on the cross. Lord, I just thank you for your grace and that you're just so kind. That you invite us now into your presence, that we may lay all our burdens, all our strife, all our performance, all our duties, all our wants, our worries, all the things about the future at your feet. And that may you right now just minister to our hearts and speak to us. That there is rest for you today. Amen.